William Dingwall is on the line with us here, and we're going to talk about his book, What Happened When I Was Asleep. Good afternoon, William. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine, thank you.
So, what was it that inspired you to write this book?
Well, I was at a Zoom connection with U3A, University of the Third Age, and it was a current affairs program. And what was shown was, to me, a false propaganda from an organization that wished to alter people's minds. And I said as much at the time. And I was accused by one of the participants of being either extremely stupid or very clever. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't answer that in one sentence. I had to go away and write the book. It took me 7 months.
And in the book, you mentioned the importance of protecting the younger generation from totalitarianism. What steps do you think ought to be taken to do that?
Well, obviously, the educational system has been accessed by faulty thinking, and that has to be corrected. Wokeism has to be eliminated. And for that, it's very much in the hands, I feel, of the parents, because the children are at an age where they have no voice. And I don't know who your audience is, so I'm assuming it's the parents.
Who do you think is to blame for this potential totalitarianism and wokeism, as you say? Is it governments? Is it actually the teachers themselves? Or
Well, I'll give you, if I may, quote something from my book. It's a quotation to give Klaus Schwab, founder and chairman of the World Economic Forum and author of the book COVID-19, The Great Reset, the right of reply. Quote, "At least 4 billion useless eaters shall be eliminated by the year 2050 by means of fatal rapid-acting diseases and starvation. Energy, food and water shall be kept at subsistence levels for the non-elites, starting with the white population of Western Europe and North America and then spreading to other races. The population of Canada, Western Europe and United States will be decimated more rapidly than the other continents until the world's population reaches a manageable level of 1 billion, of which 500 million will be consisting of Chinese and Japanese races, selected because they are people who have been regimented for centuries and who are accustomed to obeying authority without question. From the time there shall be artificially contrived food and water shortages and medical care to remind the masses that their very existence depends on the goodwill of the Committee of 300. End of quote. Four sentences from the book. My answer to that right now, I've just started a change.org protest, demolish the Houses of Parliament and Big Ben, home to the one world government terrorist organisation. We have to start with our government.
that's quite extreme, isn't it?
It's just a change.org protest. It's sending a strong message. It's a Guy Fawkes moment.
So is it a serious attempt to destroy the Parliament, or is it a petition that's meant to scare the government into taking action?
It's not going to scare anybody. In some ways, it's laughable. But when you read what Klaus Schwab is writing, that too is laughable if it wasn't so serious. And how is Klaus Schwab administering that? It's not through the World Economic Forum. It's through all the connections they have to control industry, to control medicine, to control hospitals, the NHS. That's another area that this country, most of this country, probably not aware of, but there's laws being introduced in England and Wales for euthanasia. And if you take the figures given in the legislation, it will kill off 60 million people over the next 100 years, assuming they keep to their figures. And all this is being done undercover, hidden. The government's not very open about what it's up to.
In the book as well, you talk about the ways that individuals ought to take action. What are the most effective ways you think people can create change in the society today?
Well, at the moment, in some ways, society's out of control in the sense that we have this great global warming hoax. I explain that in the book in about 25, 30 pages, that this is just a normal weather conditions for this time in the Earth and Sun's normal cycle round the cosmos. The sun travels at 135 miles a second and takes 26,000 years to do the loop. So it comes across a lot of different planets on its way. And at the moment, we are approaching a planet called Nemeru, which is a black star, a dead star, call it what you will, but it's got very, very strong magnetic field, which, as I explain in the book, is what's causing all these reactions from the Earth, because the moon itself has an effect on the Earth through the tidal influence. Now, something much stronger than that is tearing at the Earth's plates and causing the earthquakes, causing the volcanoes, and disrupting the Earth's normal activity, which people are obviously taking advantage of in trying to introduce green track taxis, electric cars. The whole thing is quite ludicrous and is misleading.
Isn't that just double speaking though? Because a lot of people wouldn't necessarily understand the explanation there, so how could they possibly argue with you?
Well, the explanation's in the book. I have actually gone into the global warming issue and what is happening and man's hand in that global warming, because they have developed weapons of mass destruction using weather, using forest fires, using storms. And that creates the myth of the weather hoax, because they're creating the weather. Man is creating some of that bad weather through his instruments of mass destruction, which I go into fully in the book.
And you also weave into the story of William Wallace in the book. What is the significance of him, and why does it actually relate to the book?
Well, in some ways, William Wallace lived through a time where Edward I was the dictator of the day. And at that time in Scotland, Scotland had no king. So essentially, Edward decided he would appoint himself king of Scotland and came up with his army with that intent. And that was in 1297. And he was sent back to England without achieving his aims. But his then aims targeted William Wallace himself, and 8 years later, William Wallace was captured by the English and died a horrible death. But up here in Scotland, we have this lovely memorial to William Wallace, which has good connotations out of it. But in the case of Edward I, his memorial is in a swamp in Cumbria, which is about 20 feet high with an iron fence around it and only sheep visiting. And so the irony is, in history, Edward I is forgotten, but William Wallace is remembered for his good deeds, as it were.
But there are some that would argue that we often look back and forget about the negatives of people.
History will tell you otherwise. He was a very intelligent man and very well educated.
So what do you think readers will take away from your book, What Happened When I Was Asleep?
Well, they'll either be awake and go back to sleep, or they'll be awake and decide this cannot stand. Something has to be done. And the protest on change.org is a small start to such a situation. And then all these politicians who are products of the World Economic Forum must be voted out of their positions and honest politicians put in their stead. I mean, there's no secret now that Tony Blair left power and is now a millionaire 55 times over. That wasn't done by honest means, for sure. It was done as a reward for his having carried out the tasks, carried out an illegal war in Iraq and murdered 500,000 children in Iraq as a consequence of that war. There's a lot of people who have a lot to answer for. And we can, as a society worldwide, live in peace if the society is allowed to do so. But we're controlled by an industrial power in all the countries, which basically controls the vote, controls who gets into power, and controls the consequences, the actions, the production that goes on.
Do you have any more books after this one?
Well, I'm working on a sequel. But I've only just started. It will take me some time to put it together.
In the meantime, where are we able to find this book, What Happened When I Was Asleep?
Well, at the moment, it's a downloadable book. It's on Kindle, it's on Amazon Books, it's on Ingram Spark, it's on Kobo. It's fully downloadable, but at the moment, the hard copy, paperback and hardback, I haven't got my hands on that yet myself. Woodbridge publishers are publishing it, and I'm awaiting some sort of information. I think they've released the book to presumably the book buyers for their comments and their orders. So I'm waiting on that kind of response to take it to the next level.
Well, in the meantime, many thanks for talking to us today. It's been great having you on.
Right, well, thank you very much.